तबले में, ढोलक में, कोरस में साउंड चाहिए प्लीज। हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे रामा हरे रामा राम राम मिलके बोलेंगे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम हरे हरे हरि बोल हरि बोल थोड़ा साउंड दीजिए कृष्ण हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे बोलिए हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Once more. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining Srimad Bhagavad class and attentive japa. We'll make a start this morning and still carrying on with that reading with the incarnation of Kapil Muni. So we know that Kapil Muni has left the house and Mother Devahuti, she's with her son Kapiladev, who's living not in the house but nearby, and it's believed that he took birth to deliver Sankhya philosophy to his mother and also to other people, and she will also be doing the same, delivering this philosophy to others as well. And now she found the opportunity to ask Kapil Muni about this philosophy, because she was very agitated and disturbed after her husband had left the house, and now she wants that she should get mentally and physically liberated from this material life. And after she asked last time in the last week, so now Kapil Muni, he's responding to her request. So Kapil Muni says, "O most pious mother, I shall now explain unto you the ancient yoga system, which I explained formerly to the great sages. It is serviceable and practical in every way." So as we discussed last week, the Lord doesn't manufacture a new system of yoga. Sometimes it is claimed that someone has become an incarnation of God and is expounding a new theological aspect of the absolute truth. But here we find that although Kapil Muni is the Lord himself and is capable of manufacturing a new doctrine for his mother, he nevertheless says, "I shall just explain the ancient system which I once explained to the great sages," because they were all anxious to hear about it. So when we have an excellent process already present in Vedic scriptures, there is no need to concoct a new system to mislead the innocent public. So at present, it has become a fashion to reject the standard system and present something bogus in the name of newly invented process of yoga. So we have to be very careful that everything is there in the Shastras. Somebody comes out with something new that is not there, then we should be careful about this authenticity. Let's do a quick prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukham Kroti Vachalam Pangum Langyate Grim Yad Kirpatam Ham Vande Shri Guru Deen Taranam Pramananda Madhvam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tassat. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatto Jayam Udiriyet. Nasta Presha Abdareshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Neshtaki. And he goes on to explain the stage in which the consciousness of the living entity is attracted by the three modes of nature, material nature, is called conditioned life. But when that same consciousness is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in the consciousness of liberation. So Kapil Muni, he's splitting throughout his dialogue, he's splitting matter and spirit. So he's talking about the stages of consciousness, about conditioned life and spiritual life. There is a distinction here between Krishna consciousness and Maya consciousness. Guneshu, or attracted to gunas, or Maya consciousness involves attachment to the three modes of nature, under which one works sometimes in goodness and knowledge, with the central attachment for material enjoyment. And these are the cause of one's conditioned life. When the same Chaita or consciousness is transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or when one becomes Krishna conscious, he is on the path of liberation. So same process, but where it's applied is the important thing. So when one is completely cleansed of the impurities of lust and greed, produced from the false identification of the body as I and body possession as mine, one's mind becomes purified. In that pure state, he transcends the stage of so-called material happiness and distress. So that's basically called liberation, that when you're not identifying with the body and everything to do with the body, you are liberated and your mind becomes purified. In that pure state, he transcends the state of so-called material happiness and distress. The material happiness and distress is mainly due to the body. It's everything to do with the body. Calm and low are the symptom of material existence. Everyone always desires to possess something. It is said here that desire and greed are the products of false identification of oneself with the body. When one becomes free from this contamination, then his mind and consciousness also become freed and attain the original state. Mind, consciousness, and the living entity exist. Whenever we speak of the living entity, this includes the mind and the consciousness. The difference between conditioned life and liberated life occurs when we purify the mind and the consciousness. When they are purified, one becomes transcendental to material happiness and distress. So Srila Prabhupada is expanding on that verse. So in the beginning, Lord Kapil has said that perfect yoga enables one to transcend the platform of material distress and happiness. How this can be done explained here. One has to purify his mind and consciousness. So to escape from material distress and happiness, we have to purify our mind and consciousness. And it says further that this can be done by the Bhakti Yoga system, as explained in the Narad Panchratra. One's mind and senses should be purified. Tat pratavena nirmalam. One's senses must be engaged in devotional service to the Lord. So if we want to purify our mind, our consciousness, it's very important to do devotional service, starting from Shravanam and Kirtanam and pure chanting. That automatically purifies our senses and consciousness. That is a process. The mind must have some engagement. One cannot make the mind vacant. Of course, there are some foolish attempts to try to make the mind vacant or void, but that is not possible. The only process that will purify the mind is to engage it in Krishna. The mind must be engaged. If we engage our mind in Krishna, naturally the consciousness becomes fully purified, and there is no chance of entrance of material desire and greed. So as we say, I've said many times that if we fill our mind with Krishna consciousness, there is no room left for material desires and greed. If we don't, then there's lots of opportunity to get attracted to these qualities. At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. So here, Kapil Muni is explaining the state of the soul, the difference between the soul, the Atma, and the Paramatma. In the state of pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, not different from the Supreme Lord. As stated in Bhagavad-Gita, the Jiva or the individual soul is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sun's rays are minute particles of the brilliant constitution of the sun. So living entity is a minute particle of the Supreme Spirit. So Krishna is described here as the sun, and we are his uh, particles of light, like his light, sun's rays. We are like little particles. And there's so many rays and so many living entities, but there's only one sun. The individual soul and the Supreme Lord are not separated as in material differentiation. The individual soul is a particle from the very beginning. One should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fragmented from the whole spirit. So when we see things in a material way, something that's separate, we say separated, but this is spiritual. And spiritual, something that may look like separate, but is still one with the Lord. One should not think that because the individual soul is a particle from the very beginning, one should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fermented from the whole spirit. Mayavadi philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. This is the thing. It is not material, so it cannot be divided. That part, the jiva, is eternally apart. As long as the Supreme Spirit exists, his part and parcel also exists. As long as the sun exists, the molecules of the sun's rays also exist. So it's like that. The jiva particle is estimated in the Vedic literature to be 1/10,000th the size of the upper portion of a hair. It is therefore infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is infinite, but the living entity or the individual soul is infinitesimal, although it is not different in quality from the Supreme Spirit. So that is the understanding. We are limited, Krishna is unlimited. The Supreme Spirit is all pervading, but the very small spirit is the individual soul. We are not all pervading. Akhanditam means not exactly fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. No one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun, but at the same time, the molecular part of sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. Similarly, the living entity, by its constitutional position, is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but is infinitesimal. So it's a very good example Prabhupada gives of the sun and the sun's rays, that although the sun's rays are not the sun, but they still cannot, they are the symptom of the sun, and they cannot be fragmented or splitted from the sun. So Kapil Muni continues that in that position of self-realization by practice of knowledge and renunciation in devotional service. So for self-realization, for understanding you are the spirit, and for purification, we are doing devotional service. And then Kapil Muni says that in that position of self-realization by practice of knowledge and renunciation in devotional service, one sees everything in the right perspective. So that is what happens in the next stage, that one sees everything in the right perspective. He becomes indifferent to material existence, and the material influence acts less powerfully upon him. So this Krishna consciousness is a science. It's a science science means you get results. You do experiment, you get results. So when we are doing devotional service, you see the results of that. And this is the results, that we become indifferent to material existence, and the material influence acts less powerfully upon us. We don't have this problem with happiness and distress, like the seasons always changing. We are in this position, or either we're happy or we are sad, something going on, but we become equipoised. As the contamination of the germs of a particular disease can influence a weaker person, similarly, the influence of material nature or illusory energy can act on the weaker or conditioned soul, but not on the liberated soul, because now we become spiritually healthy and material energy cannot contaminate us or work on us. Self-realization is the position of the liberated state. One understands his constitutional position by knowledge and vairagya, renunciation. Without knowledge, one cannot have the realization, and the realization that one is infinitesimal, part and parcel of the Supreme Personal Spirit makes him unattached to the material conditioned life. So once you get a realization that you are a spirit person, then you automatically become unattached to material life and conditioned life. That is the beginning of devotional service. Unless one is liberated from material contamination, one cannot engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. In this verse, when one is in full knowledge of one's constitutional position and is in the renounced order of life, detached from material attraction, then by pure devotional service, bhakti yuktena, he can engage himself as a loving servant of the Lord. Paripriyashati means that he can see everything in its right perspective. So we can see what's spiritual, what is material. We can see the difference. At the moment, it's all mixed up. We can't make up our mind. Are we spiritual? Are we material? Then when you're in that bhakti yuktena state, then you can see which is material part and which is the spiritual part. Then the influence of material nature becomes almost nil. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nasuchita Kamshti. So when one is self-realized, he becomes happy and free from the influence of material nature. So Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. At that time, he's freed from lamentation and hankering. So that's the Shochti and Kamshti. You're not lamenting on the past, and you're not hankering or being greedy for anything in the future. You become equal. The Lord states the position as Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param, the real state of beginning devotional service. Similarly, it is confirmed in the Narad Pancharatra that when the senses are purified, they can be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. One who is attached to material contamination cannot be a devotee. So we are actually practicing devotees because we still have material contamination. This is why we're trying to purify ourselves to a state that we can be a devotee. We're just at the moment practicing devotees. Perfection in self-realization cannot be attained by any kind of yogi unless he engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So devotional service is given the highest state. For that is the only auspicious path. That knowledge and renunciation are never perfect unless joined by devotional service, is explicitly explained here. When there is devotional service, then the question is where to offer that service. Devotional service is to be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the super soul of everything, and for that is the only reliable path of self-realization. So explaining why we're doing devotional service, because God is the Paramatma, and that's the only reliable path of self-realization or Brahman realization. The word Brahma Siddhe means to understand oneself to be different from matter. To understand oneself to be Brahman, the Vedic words are Aham Brahmasmi. Brahma Siddhi means that one should know that he is not matter, he is pure soul. There are different kind of yogis, but every yogi is supposed to engage in self-realization or Brahman realization. We are mentioned as Brahman because we are spiritual. So Brahman means spiritual. So spirit realization or soul realization or self-realization, because we are spirit soul. It is clearly stated here that unless one is fully engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot have easy approach to the path of Brahma Siddhi. Now, Sri Prabhupada mentions that in the beginning of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that when one engages himself in the devotional service of Vasudeva, spiritual knowledge and renunciation of the material world automatically become manifest. Thus, a devotee does not have to try separately for renunciation or knowledge. Devotion service itself is so powerful that by one's service attitude, everything is revealed. It is stated here, Shiva Pantha. That is the only auspicious path for self-realization. The path of devotion service is the most confidential means for attaining Brahman realization. That perfection in Brahman realization is attained through the auspicious path of devotion service, indicates that the so-called Brahman realization or realization of the Brahmjyoti of effulgence is not Brahma Siddhi. Beyond that Brahmjyoti, there is a Supreme Personality Godhead. And in the issue of Upanishad, the devotee prays, there's a prayer in the issue of Upanishad, the devotee prays to the Lord to kindly put aside the effulgence, the Brahmjyoti, so that the devotee may see within the Brahmjyoti the actual eternal form of the Lord. Unless one attains realization of the transcendental form of the Lord, there is no question of bhakti. Bhakti necessitates the existence of the recipient of devotion service and the devotee who renders devotion service. Like you say, if there's a God, there's a bhakt, and there's service. There has to be three things present. So bhakti necessitates the existence of the recipient of devotion service and the devotee who renders devotion service. Brahma Siddhi through devotion service is realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The understanding of the effulgent rays of the body of the Supreme Godhead is not the perfect stage of Brahma Siddhi or Brahman realization, nor is the realization of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality perfect. For Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality Godhead is Akhil Atma. He is the super soul. One who realizes the Supreme Personality realizes the feature, other feature, namely the Paramatma feature and the Brahman feature and the total realization of Brahma Siddhi, the Bhagwan himself. So Kapil Muni, he's explained that we should understand the difference between the soul and the spirit and matter, and that's the only way we can advance, because then we have better focus and we understand how to avoid material contamination and how to understand spiritual life. So that's the reading for today, and thank you all so much for joining. Jai Prabhu, welcome back, and thank you Madhav Sham Sundar Prabhuji for joining. Partha Prabhu, Praveen Mataji, Sarvashri Mataji. I don't know where is our Rukmini Mataji nowadays. I think she's busy, but anyway, thank you all for joining, and we'd love to hear your views on this, what Kapil Muni and Sri Prabhupada has mentioned. And we're talking a lot about contamination, material contamination, and about purification. And it's mentioned that devotional service is the only way to purify ourselves. And I guess to purify ourselves properly needs to be pure devotional service, because a lot of the service we do tends to be tinged with our own selfish desires, or we do things for our own benefit. We do some service, and we, because we like to do this service, we choose which service we want, and we're looking for enjoyment in that service. So how do we go about doing pure devotional service? That's what we need to know, because that is the way to purify ourselves. Once we purify ourselves, then automatically we get self-realization. Automatically it's mentioned there that we understand that we are a spirit soul. Otherwise we forget, because if we are still contaminated with matter, we're still thinking on the bodily platform about things, then we keep forgetting that we are a spiritual soul. we have to, once we are purified, then we automatically understand that we are this spiritual soul and not this body or mind. And then we'll be happy because we're not controlled by material life. Hare Krishna. So Jai Prabhu is listening only. Mother Sham Sundar Prabhu, would you like to make some comment?
Hari Bol Prabhuji.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Yeah, very nice class. Very interested. Yeah, so I like to hear from other devotee Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Partha Prabhu, anything you like to say about this?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Such a nice class. So I was reading Ishopanishad. Yes, yesterday I was reading this text 15, which you already, I was thinking about to say that, but you already mentioned about that. Because here in 15 and 16 both are the prayers where one has to pray to the Lord so that God will reveal himself. So in one of the lectures, Prabhupada mentioned that unless the Lord reveals himself, the devotee cannot see him. He reserves the right of being exposed or not being exposed. The Yogamaya curtain is always covering the Lord. And in the Bhagavad-Gita, Lord says, I am not visible to everyone. So as you already said, like the living entity is a combination of mind and consciousness. And only through Bhakti Yoga, one can purify these two. That's what Prabhuji, I make a note of those points. That's it.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, absolutely. The devotee says, please remove this effulgence so I can see you, so I have a true vision of you. Thank you so much, Partha. Yes, very nice.